Hello all. Welcome. Welcome to our webinar. Right, we're gonna wait a couple minutes for more people to join, 1 or 2 minutes, and then we can get it started. Excellent. How's everyone today? You can say in the chats, hellos and all that.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Afternoon, everyone.
People are starting to come in. Excellent. Good. Right. Okay, I think it's 4:01. Yeah, cameras are not working, so that is fine, Claire. That is fine. Yeah, no worries about that. It's just the webinar setting that our cameras are not working, so no worries. Perfect. Okay, we'll start it. We'll start the webinar. It's 2 minutes past 2, so I think that's a good point to start. So let me share my screen, and then we can. 2 seconds. Share my screen. Excellent. And everyone see my screen all right?
Yes.
Perfect. Good. All right, let's get it started. So good afternoon again, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. It's Transforming Nutrition Management in Social Care. As you might have guessed, this session is gonna be all about nutrition in the social care setting and in care homes. So my name is Sotirios, and I'm the marketing lead here at PredicAire. I'll be the one moderating this webinar and also the questions at the end. We're gonna have the session itself is gonna be around 45 minutes. So we're gonna have around 10 to 15 minutes to answer them all. So make sure you put your inquiries in the Q&A sections or the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. Right, to move things forward, I'm gonna introduce the panel to walk us through the challenges of nutrition in care homes. Today I'm joined by a fantastic panel. First, we're going to have Oliver Clothier, who brings over 24 years of experience in hospitality and more than a decade dedicated to healthcare. Oliver focuses on improving quality and dignity through coach-based leadership and delivering hospitality-led training on IDDSI levels, dining standards, and food safety management to care providers all around the country. So next we have Kate Kay. She is the head of operations and quality compliance at Fortava Healthcare. She has an extensive experience across the sector. And Kate focuses and combines clinical insight and operational oversight. She's here to share with us the tangible real-world impact that Fortava has seen, including specific numbers and outcomes they have achieved since they began their specialized training in IDDSI. And finally, we have our own Ketan Shah, co-founder and managing director of PredicAire. Ketan developed our PredicAire, our platform, after experiencing firsthand the risks of fragmented communication, especially nutrition. He's going to show us today what PredicAire offers in terms of our nutrition app and how to monitor IDDSI levels through our single source of truth solution. Excuse me. And now, before we dive in, I think everyone is ready. I would love to look at the current reality based on the pre-webinar survey. And for those of you that you have completed the survey, as you can see, the data tells us a bit of a compelling story. 44% of you are still relying on verbal handovers between the care and the kitchen teams, while 1 in 3, 33%, are juggling multiple digital systems to manage a single resident. Another important point here is that 77% of you feel somewhat confident in IDDSI levels, something we hope to address and ameliorate today in this session. However, the #1 challenge cited in this journey is managing dysphagia safely. And as I said, we are here today to bridge that gap between the somewhat confident and the completely secure in your nutrition and clinical outcomes. So if everyone is ready, let's get it started. Oliver, I'll hand over to you to talk about the IDDSI challenge.
Perfect. Good afternoon, guys. Thank you for coming along today. So as I was introduced, so I've got 24 years experience within catering. I dedicated the last 10 of those decade within care homes. And for me, the biggest impact I wanted to achieve by doing that was the reason that I wanted to do that was at the time when I was moving out of hotels and into care, my head chef that I was working with at the time had made a bit of an off-the-cuff comment towards me of, well, why would you want to go into care homes? You're not retiring and they don't appreciate good food. For me, that kind of struck a chord. That was it. I was absolutely dedicated. I was going to make a difference within health and social care. So by doing that, I've come in focused very heavily on IDDSI and modified diets, fortification, weight management, but with the main goal to still be providing that really high quality food at the end of it. For me, dietary requirements, so whether that's residents that have got swallowing difficulties, whether that is allergens, whether that's cultural diets, they shouldn't affect the end quality that we provide. It's really important that we are still providing that same level, that same quality, essentially, of what it is, what they deserve, what residents deserve. You know, they've worked their entire lives, and it's really important that they have that that quality of life and the quality of life and the benefits of working so hard all their lives. It's nice to give something back to them. So what we're going to focus on today is IDDSI and the texture modified diets. We're going to look at fortification, so how we battle weight loss and how we can, it's essentially a whole home approach, and then how to ensure food quality is there and we provide it consistently as well. Next slide, please. So just to start with the IDDSI framework, IDDSI stands for the International Dysphagia Diet Standardisation Initiative. The main reason that it was introduced was to provide a standard level or a standard framework to work to no matter where you are in the world. That framework will be exactly the same in any country that recognise it and work to it. The idea is it gives you a very clear description of the level, gives you a number, a brief description of that. So for instance, easy chew, minced and moist, and then it gives you testing methods for those as well. It's so important. So what I've noticed over the last decade is that initially when I first walked into there, IDDSI wasn't around initially, but then when it did get introduced, it wasn't recognized as an important part of what we did as chefs and as care homes. So over time, we're now starting to see the impact of getting that wrong, and the best way of countering that is through training. So making sure that staff are capable to identify the issues, safe production of food, making sure that it's done consistently again, how we can enhance the flavors that we're producing on modified diets as well, because there's an issue when producing modified diets that has an impact on the end quality because of the process that we have to follow and the appearance and presentation of that food as well. So when it comes to modified diets, once they've been produced, generally what we find is they'll go into a hot trolley. Not very often do you see it being served immediately. But so once it's gone to a hot trolley, it sits there for 10, 15, 20 minutes. theoretically it could sit there for up to 2 hours, and that's absolutely fine. But the issue with doing that is the longer you hot hold modified foods for, the more they change consistency. So the best way of managing that is by having a two-stage testing method. And that's what I do throughout the training. So whilst I've been out delivering training to individual homes, I've focused on this two-stage of testing. The way that we do it is chef or cook, whoever it is that's producing that meal, they would do the initial testing method. The testing methods generally are done using a fork and a spoon, so they're very straightforward processes, only take about 30 seconds to do, so won't impact from a time management point of view. But chefs does the first one, and then the second one is done just before that meal is served. The longer food is sat in a hot trolley for, or is hot held for, or as a part of that reheating process, it will change consistencies. And what can happen is things like condensation can build up, skins can form, it dries out, becomes thick and sticky. All of those will have an impact on whether that food is safe for that resident to eat. So by having those two stages of testing, what we're doing is we're checking it when we first produce it, but then we're making sure it's still safe. And if it's not, then the way that I've always trained this, and the way that I feel is the most productive way of dealing with that, is then to take it back to the chef to rectify that issue. I think what I have noticed the most of within care is that generally, once it goes back to a kitchen, it can be seen as, well, you've done this wrong in the first place. But actually, that isn't the case. It can just be a case of it's because it's been sat in a hot trolley or it's been reheated. That's where the problems have come in. So it's essentially not necessarily anybody's fault, but what's happened is that food is now unsafe. So by taking it back to the chef, they have the equipment, they can make sure it's right, and then it gets sent back out ready for the residents to have it. Another aspect of modified foods and how I feel is the best way of doing that is managing that, within a home, is by serving your modified meals first. Again, that's, for me, modified meals are the highest risk when it comes to meal times. So by having those meals served first, you're reducing that risk because they're not sat there for a long period of time. The quicker we can get it served, the better, the safer that food is going to be for that resident. The other issue and the other areas that I feel that it does need addressing within care is the terminology. So, like I said, the framework itself, it gives you terminology, it gives you a brief description of those levels. The terminology within that is what that's the difference between understanding what level is being provided and just a guesstimate of what we should be serving. So the word that I always hear is soft. Is, oh, can you grab me Mary's soft diet? Now, the issue with that term soft is that essentially every level within the IDDSI framework is soft food. So that confusion of, which level should I do? Which one do I think is soft? One of the first questions I always ask in IDDSI is, what do you class as soft? To provide the levels, they can see it in front of them, and ask them to point out which one is which one they would class as a soft diet. But what we generally find is that it's a range of everything, every level, because soft food is soft food, whether you cook it for a longer period of time, whether you puree it down, mash it, it's soft. So by using the terminology correctly and in the right way, what's going to happen is you're clearer on what level it is. So Mary needs a level 5 minced and moist diet. Well, all of a sudden now I know what level it is, how I'm going to test it, and essentially the characteristics of that consistency that I need. Next slide, please. Now, when it comes to modified diets and essentially any dietary requirement from a resident, it's how we share that information. So when we're sharing that information, it's how quickly does that happen? Is it accurate to what that resident requires? If you have a change in consistency, one of the biggest things, and again, I'm going back on my experience and what I've seen, is that residents will change consistency. They may have a choking incident in the evening, for instance, when the chefs have gone home, and then they'll come in the next day and that communication hasn't come through to the kitchen quick enough. So what they'll do is they'll go back to what they were producing before, and then ultimately, if that's not been passed to every member, it's not going to be picked up. You're putting that resident in at risk, essentially. So it's how do we share that communication? How do we use paperwork? Do we use systems? if you have a system that is real time, if you've got something that you can use that will pass it from department to department, and there won't be those discrepancies, then that is the safest way of doing it. So if you have a think for yourselves, like the systems that you use now, how quickly do they change? So if there is a change in that, how quickly is that passed to the kitchen? How quickly is it passed to your nurses, your seniors, agency carers that are working, things like that? Because that speed in which that happens is ultimately could be the difference between life and death. And I know that sounds drastic, but ultimately, if you get the consistencies wrong, it could result in choking, it can result in aspiration, which can lead to death. Next slide, please. So, like going back to when I was saying about this, the training itself. Okay, so the identification of incorrect levels can reduce the risk of choking, aspiration, pneumonia, safeguardings, and fines. So it can be catastrophic if that information isn't being passed across, if the carers aren't aware. We have seen recently, and I'm sure most people may have seen this, is common knowledge, but there is one of the largest care providers in the UK recently have had an incident where an incorrect level was given by an agency carer to a resident who required a level 5 mince to moist diet. Sadly, she passed away because it was a level 6 that she'd been given, so she choked on that. The result of that is that there was a £1.9 million fine, and that's an easily preventable occurrence. If there was correct handover, if the information was available there and then, that way that the carers, the agency that you've got working, the chefs that are in there, they're able to provide the safest food and the correct levels to what that person needs. So there's also examples, where carers and seniors, caregivers, they've been given prison sentences where incorrect levels have been given, and ultimately resulted in residents losing their lives. So it's vital from a business point of view, but I think for me the most important thing is about that resident, making sure they are as safe as possible. And once you've got that safety in place, then your residents will start to, once that trust is there from a resident's point of view, they can enjoy food, because that's one of the biggest things. If a resident doesn't feel safe, they won't eat. So if they feel like you understand your levels and what they're getting on a consistent basis is correct, it's enjoyable, then they will eat more, which means then weight loss will be prevented more. It makes that whole process a lot easier. Next slide, please. So when it comes to food quality, for me, freshly home-cooked foods are best. In regards to residents, they've generally have grown up having freshly cooked foods, so convenient products weren't readily available all the time. So the issue we have with those ready meals or those convenience foods, that they have a higher level of sodium, they have less nutrients within them. So if you've got residents who potentially aren't going to be eating as much anyway, then you don't want to be serving them foods that don't contain those nutrients. Food quality, whether flavour or presentation, is vital for good nutritional intake. So making sure you have colourful, well-presented food when you're served, like every mealtime. That's a quite easy fix. So it's about cooking techniques. So if we're looking at colour, we're not having brown peas that are being served every day or broccoli that's been overcooked. We can quite easily change that process, keeping the colours bright, vibrant, and that will just draw residents' attentions. So when they're sat there eating, they're going to consume more of it because they're interested. It looks presentable. It looks nice. When we're doing modified foods, the appearance of that is probably more important than with your regular diets, because if you think from a resident's point of view, they've grown up, they've eaten regular food all their lives, and all of a sudden they're being put onto a pureed consistency. That pureed consistency doesn't look like the food they normally would have used, or normally would have had. So there are examples out there of using molds and things like that, which do come in the shapes of specific foods. So if you have carrots, you can mold them into carrots. My concern with those is the process of freezing down the food and then reheating them can cause more issues. So it can thicken, essentially the food will create ice crystals inside. So the water will freeze and create these ice crystals. When it then defrosts, essentially that food is dried out more. So it becomes thicker, it becomes more sticky. You also will end up with a thin liquid that will sit on the plate afterwards, which essentially, even if it is a small amount, can cause a risk there of aspiration where it's dropping down into the lungs. So it's about being aware of your presentation. Does it need to look like the food it was previously, or can we make it look presentable without having to follow that process where, you know, there may be changes? Taste is a massive part of modified food as well. So if you go to your homes, go to your chefs within your groups, or, you know, at any point, ask your chef to taste the food. One of the biggest things for me is about, as a chef, understanding what that food tastes like, and is it something that I'm going to keep going back to? Is it something I'm going to keep eating? With modified foods, the process of doing it, we lose that flavor. Okay, so the longer it's cooked for, we're losing flavor. So yes, okay, we can add salt, we can add pepper, seasoning, things like that, using stocks as well to cooking. They will enhance that flavor, but that process, again, once we then start modifying it, it's just going to lose those flavors. So the best way of doing it is by adding things like sweet and sour flavors. Now, as we get older, essentially we lose taste buds. So when you're born, you have 10,000 taste buds. By the time you're 50, you've dropped about half of those. So the last things that we can taste is sweet and sour. So if we can enhance the flavor of the food, so whether that's carrots with orange and star anise, for instance, or using honey to like added into that modified food, what that will do is it will bring up the flavor. Essentially, all of a sudden we have a flavorful food which they're going to recognize, they can pick up on. One of the biggest things for me, and it was something that I've picked up on in my time across care, is I've always seen in pretty much every one of the homes I've worked in that residents will sit there with a glass of juice and pour it over their dinner. And the reason for that is because they can taste the juice but can't taste the meal. So it's understanding how we can enhance that flavor, you know, by adding the sweetness, by adding something sharp like citrus fruits or vinegar to food. That will just really kind of bring out the flavor more and make it easier for that resident to recognize that they're eating something quite enjoyable. When it comes to snacks, one of the biggest things for me is, and I do see it everywhere I go, is if you have a resident on a modified diet, the snacks generally are yogurts and mousse. Now, for me, that is it's great that we're providing a safe option, but that safe option doesn't always contain the right amount of nutrition. So 90% of all food can be texture modified if you use the correct equipment. So there's certain things like fried foods, you do struggle to modify them properly because of the crust on the outside. It generally won't break down. It is doable, but it's a long process and it's quite difficult. So it's about understanding, okay, so if we have a cake on at 3 o'clock, for instance, why can't that be modified down? Can we do fruits? Can we do biscuits? Things like that, and taken to the right consistency so that, for instance, Mary isn't always having a yogurt at 3 o'clock or a yogurt at 11 o'clock. There is a place for yogurts, but I think it's the volume in which we use them. That's it. Yeah. Next slide, please. Sorry. So the next bit we're looking at is weight loss. How do we fortify the foods? How do we monitor whether residents are losing weight? And then what interaction do we need to have, or, you know, what interaction do we need to do to make sure that we're reducing that risk? So essentially, there's plenty of ways. Essentially, it's just fortification is the main way, but what we're looking to do with that process is add nutrition without increasing the amount that person needs to eat. So there on the screen, you can see there's a variety of different forms that you can add to it, but out of all of those, the main focus is protein. There are elements within that. There are certain residents who may not be able to consume a certain amount of protein. So then we have to find other alternative ways of doing it. But for the majority, generally, we kind of go down that protein route. Now, as my time as my time during whilst I was an executive chef in some groups, I've worked quite closely with dietitians as well as with part of this, and generally I have been advised to make sure we're using the Lakeland Dairy skimmed milk powder. The main reason for that is because it has the highest amount of protein content per 100 grams, contains 364 calories per 100 grams, 36.4 grams of protein, and because it's a skimmed milk powder, it only contains 1.25 grams of fat, and which 0.82 of that is saturated. So what we're doing there is we're adding nutrition, but we're not adding sugar, we're not adding fat all the time, because ultimately we know there's health benefits to the fortification element, but if we're packing somebody full of sugar and fat, we know the impact that's going to have on those people. When we're using that milk powder, so generally I see it used within milkshakes. That is kind of the typical thing, but it's not limited to that. So you can use it within desserts, cakes, as well, biscuits, things like that. You do have to be mindful as part of the cooking process, because it's a milk powder, it will burn a little bit quicker. So it's about understanding your temperatures of the oven, things like that. But it can also be used in your main courses. So adding to sauces, it can be added to mashed potatoes, vegetables. And what that will do is it will just give it a creamier taste, but again, increasing the protein and the calories within that meal, but they're not actually going to be eating any more of it. It's just, essentially we're just lifting that up a little bit higher. When it comes to the other forms of protein, so beans, pulses, eggs, cheese, nuts, things like that, essentially anything that will that is growing, if it's the start of life, so your eggs, for instance, or it's the start of your seeds, your pulses, beans, things like that, where they will grow, they have a high content of protein. So using those, if you're making casseroles, can we add in some beans into that? If you're making stews and things and pies and things like that, then can we add some lentils into there as well? Because that will just help increase the protein content within those meals. Obviously, the reason and the main reason we focus on protein is because it helps maintain muscle mass and growth, bone structure and health, blood sugar regulation. So with your diabetics, it's important to have a high level of protein coming through, improved immune functions, and then maintaining and enhancing weight. So there's so many benefits to using those protein-based products, obviously where that's appropriate for residents. Next slide, please. So essentially, like I said, I deliver this training. I work in anything to do with dining, catering. I can support home. So thank you so much for listening to what I've got to say in regards to IDDSI and modified diets and fortification. If you found it helpful and you'd like to have a conversation about it, please scan the QR code. That will take you through to all my details. So it's my email address, phone number, LinkedIn page, and just reach out and we can have a chat at any point. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you, Oliver. Yeah, I'm gonna stay for a couple seconds here until I introduce Kate. Kate is gonna go next, talking about real-world results. And yeah, if you want, amazing what you said, Oliver. Makes absolute sense. And thank you so much. And yeah, let's move on to Kate. Kate, if you wanna go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and hi everyone. Fortava Healthcare was only founded 9 months ago, so today I just want to share with you our first part of the nutrition management journey and what outcomes we've achieved and how we've done that. So as a care home provider, nutrition management to me isn't simply about serving meals. It's a fundamental part of safe, compassionate and high quality care. When we consider residents living with dysphagia, that importance of getting that right becomes so much more critical. From my perspective, effective nutrition management in social care underpins everything that we all are aiming to achieve: safety, dignity, well-being and quality of life. So preventing malnutrition and improving physical health. Malnutrition still remains a significant risk within our older population, and particularly for those that we care for with complex health needs. For residents with dysphagia, this risk is even greater due to reduced intake, fear of choking or poorly adapted diets. As a provider, I see firsthand how proactive screening, appropriate texture modification and fortified meals can maintain weight and muscle strength, reduce hospital admissions, improve wound healing and support recovery from illness. Good nutrition shouldn't be an add-on. I see it as a clinical prevention in action. Enhancing mental well-being and quality of life. Food is deeply connected to comfort, identity and enjoyment for a lot of us. For me personally, it's a real social experience, time with friends and family, and a time that I make some real meaningful memories. And this shouldn't be any different for the people that live with us. When residents receive meals that are safe and appealing, we see increased confidence at meal times, reduced anxiety around swallowing, greater social engagement and improved mood and dignity. For people with dysphagia, ensuring that modified meals remain appetising and recognisable is essential, because nobody should feel excluded from the pleasure of eating. Supporting long-term condition management. Many of our residents live with conditions such as strokes, Parkinson's, dementia, all of which we know can affect swallowing or nutritional status. Effective dysphagia management allows us to maintain their hydration, support medication administration, reduce aspiration risk and stabilise chronic conditions. By aligning their dietary plans and menus with clinical recommendations, we improve overall health outcomes and reduce avoidable complications. Reducing safety risk. Safety is paramount, and Oliver's discussed people losing their lives due to errors being made that are preventable in a lot of cases, and then the significant fines that are being placed on providers. Dysphagia presents serious risks to all of us, including choking, aspiration, pneumonia, dehydration that lead to hospital admissions. Robust systems around assessment, documentation, communication, and then regular reviews are essential. Clear care planning, trained staff, and consistent application of the IDDSI framework ensure that our food and fluids are prepared to the correct texture, that staff understand testing methods, and therefore leading to residents receiving consistent, safe support. Safety isn't, in my opinion, achieved through policy alone, but it requires competence and confidence on the front line. Delivering culturally appropriate and person-centred care. Nutrition must always remain person-centred. That's what we all strive for. In my homes, we support individuals from diverse cultural, religious and personal backgrounds. And even when texture modification is required, residents should still have meals that reflect their preferences and who they are. It means being able to safely adapt traditional dishes, respecting religious dietary requirements and offering meaningful choice, and involving the families where appropriate, as they usually know the residents far better than we do. Dysphagia management should never remove autonomy. It should enhance and protect it. Ensuring compliance with professional standards. For me, compliance with IDDSI standards isn't optional, it's essential. It's essential component of governance and quality assurance. From a provider's perspective, having a structured implementation of IDDSI, it reduces variation in practice across the homes, it supports our audit and quality monitoring, it strengthens our MDT working, and it demonstrates regulatory compliance, remembering that CQC can prosecute us for a breach of Regulation 14. Having consistency then protects not only our residents, but the staff and or our organisation too. Empowering staff to deliver high quality support. It's important that we remember none of this is possible without our teams. Care staff are central to safe nutrition management. They're out on the floor day-to-day supporting our residents. So providing them with ongoing training, competency checks, clear communication pathways. It empowers them to recognise signs of swallowing difficulties, testing the modified diets correctly, supporting people safely at meal times, and then able to escalate any concerns promptly. When staff feel confident, residents feel safe. Nutrition and dysphagia management aren't isolated clinical tasks. They are core components of safe, dignified and person-centred care. By preventing malnutrition, enhancing wellbeing, reducing risks and complying with professional standards, empowering our workforce, we create environments where residents can eat safely and comfortably. Nutrition should be more than sustenance, it should be quality of life. Next slide, please. So this slide just highlights the measurable impact that targeted nutritional training has had on my homes since we started, on staff practice and the resident outcomes. We implemented PredicAire in October, and then during November and early December, we started training with Oliver. That was comprehensive training on IDDSI to all of the teams, so both the kitchen team on how to safely prepare and cook the meals, and then all the staff that play part in the meal times. It has also delivered food fortification and enhancing the dining experience for us as well. This training has significantly strengthened staff understanding of the vital role that nutrition plays in the overall health, safety and well-being. Since completed the training, we've seen clear improvements across several key clinical indicators, as you can see on the slide. We haven't had a choking incident since we've had the training, which is a phenomenal achievement. The compliance to IDDSI levels is also enhanced by the PredicAire system. It fully triangulates care planning and care delivery, in turn supporting the improvements seen across these clinical indicators. Our managers are more enabled using PredicAire and have much improved oversight than they did previously. We did have a recent incident which has clearly demonstrated to me that this learning is now being embedded into practice. So an incorrect texture modified meal was sent. The care staff promptly recognised that it didn't meet the testing standards. They followed the correct methods. They identified the error. They prevented the meal from being served, sent it back to the kitchen to ensure that it was correct. This proactive response potentially avoided a choking incident and shows that the training's translated into real-world competence and confidence. Feedback from the staff has been overwhelmingly positive. They report increased knowledge, improved confidence, and a clearer understanding of their responsibility in supporting safe and effective nutritional care. In addition, we've seen meal times are more sociable, engaging, enjoyable for the residents. Food and fluid intake is much better, which has directly contributed to the reduction in falls, hospital admissions, infections and weight loss. I think overall this demonstrates investing in nutritional education, and for us investing and utilising PredicAire doesn't only improve compliance and safety, but it transforms resident wellbeing, strengthens our team's confidence and delivers measurable outcomes. Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Kate. It really, what you said about dysphagia is also with our post pre-webinar survey, the #1 reason, like managing dysphagia. So thank you for all that. Thank you for the real world impact that you showed us. Excellent. Now on to Ketan Shah, co-founder of PredicAire, and thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you, Sotirios. Incredible to hear from Oliver and Kate, and the outcomes of a little investment, how far it goes is amazing, and it resonates very well for me because my mother was in care. I was a legal guardian. In later years, the IDDSI levels were critical. The movement from 7, 6, 5, 4 is quite big shifts. Even one level shift is a huge significant if it's not delivered correctly, as Oliver already stated. So I can't sort of support enough in terms of the importance of this. And this is why one of the reasons why PredicAire is in place, to really triangulate care fully, not only from sort of a care delivery perspective, but triangulate back to sort of care strategy and the risk assessments around that, because care strategies change. They change very quickly, and you've got to be at the forefront of it. Everyone in the care team needs to be fully aware of what those strategies are. Certainly around the IDDSI levels, it's incredible, because if you send the wrong grade through, it could have fatal impact. So, Sotirios, if you go to the next slide, just to very quickly go through, PredicAire is a big sort of enterprise platform for care. We have organic toolings, lots and lots of modules that we offer. One of the key ones, as you can see on the bottom right, is the nutritional offering. It's a nutrition app specifically catered for the kitchen teams, but actually engages the care delivery teams too, to basically give a hospitality feel. Just to give you a quick sort of showcase on the slides what it looks like. Our nutrition app, you can actually add menus, as the next slide you can see. You can see that gives you that sort of good look and feel and comfort and sort of hospitality feel, sort of ability to sort of generate menus bespoke. We give you a canvas, a structured canvas. That structured canvas can be sort of deployed at your own leisure in your own way to give your own sort of menus and dishes up. As soon as you've got your menus up, you're then able to sort of do the ordering, which the next slide will show, where the frontline team can easily order food. You can change your mind. You can order sort of multiple sort of orders for multiple residents. A very, very quick to action sort of setting for us. And then when these orders go through to the kitchen team on a live basis, they'll be able to see, what needs to be made, what's coming through. We have the ability to sort of order up to 3 days in advance. So therefore, you can actually, from a procurement perspective, organize yourselves accordingly. So you make sure that nothing goes to waste. Post-consumption, you have the ability for feedback as well, because that's important to take. Because if something needs to be taken off the menu because there's a consensus amongst the residents that the food was not great, it gives you that power to sort of take it off sort of your menu cycle. So the nutrition app is very, very important from an engagement perspective, engaging the staff, but also the residents themselves. But to triangulate that whole back, it's important that you're able to see. So the care teams will know what the IDDSI framework is, because we flag it right at the outset, both on our apps, but also on the web devices. At the same time, we triangulate that very well, because it all starts with the care strategy, care planning, and sort of the risk assessment. So the next slide will show you where we capture that. The digital care plans that we have, which is AI driven, it all starts with sort of feeding from the user. So the IDDSI level information, it gets captured in the eating and drinking care plans. The next slide will show that. And then what we do is we sort of triangulate that. You'd make sure that respective choking risks are also embedded if required. You got to make sure that the categories around food and fluid, the IDDSI level categories, are appropriately captured. And then once they are set in place, the care delivery team, the frontline who deliver the food, they have to make sure that it is delivered at the right level. So again, next slide will show that. As you can see here, it's level 7. When you're actually logging your care, you're actually confirming that you've actually delivered the exact levels that has been dictated by the care strategy. So you're creating triangulation, and it's very, very important that that is done, because fast forward 6-9 months, and when an investigation takes place, you got to make sure that you've got the evidence backing up whatever you need backed up for. So this fully enables you to sort of deliver not only real-time care, but actually deliver care proactively and not react. The next slide, please, Soterios. Right. Do get in touch with us. Clearly, you've got Oliver's information as well, but we're more than happy to sort of showcase you our toolings, our products, if you're interested. Clearly, some of the audience are also our sort of clients. Do get in touch. We can train you or retrain your staff. That's not a problem. The important thing here is making sure that nutrition is at the forefront of everyone's mind and not in the background. So cheers.
Yes, perfect. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Ketan. We're gonna move on. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna keep it for a couple more seconds. I've already got some questions from. I've been messaged some questions from someone registered but couldn't attend, and I have some. But if you guys have some questions from the audience, please let us know, and we'll answer them. First questions that I have it was about 2 seconds. It's about the best. I know you talked about the protein. I see that, but protein snacks. What would be the best, like, high protein, quick snack, Oliver? That, you know, when the resident is not very hungry. That's what they're asking.
Yeah. So essentially focusing on those protein elements, that anything with high protein, as long as that's the kind of the central part of that meal. So things like ham and cheese omelets would be a good one. If it's an alternative meal, if they don't want a big meal, they just want something quite light, then jacket potatoes. But again, looking at your high protein items that can go in with that, so cheese, tuna, things like that, baked beans, they're fairly good from that point of view. What you can do is look at the fortified cakes. So like I was saying earlier on, you can fortify most desserts, most cakes. So making sure that you're packing that full of additional milk powder, using nuts in them as well. That is a really good way of doing it. And also homemade protein balls. There's something that I've done throughout my career within care. We used to do little protein bars, little bites, things like that. Essentially, it's dried fruit, nuts, oats, things like that running through it, and they work really well. They're quite easy to eat, nice and easy, nice and soft, essentially. But yeah, packed full of protein, packed full of calories, and really do help.
All right. Okay. And another question, and that was for Oliver. It was about salt, and you mentioned about, like, adding citrusy and all that. But what other, like, ways to enhance the salt shake, other than reaching for the salt shaker, you know, for putting on salt? I know you touched briefly upon, but citrusy and all, and
sweet things.
Yeah, and sweet. But
Yeah.
any other, like, could you use, for example, from my understanding, it could be like any condiments, other spices, specific spices that are safe to use, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. So essentially, spices are absolutely fine, even with modified diets, because, you know, if they pass from a puree point of view, if they pass through a fine sieve, then it's safe to eat. That's the generalized rule. So with your spices, if you're cooking them into a meal, then you're not going to have that risk that you generally spices, unless you're using sort of cinnamon sticks, which you'd remove anyway, you wouldn't blend them into the food. So yeah, spices absolutely is a great way of doing it. Like I said earlier, things like bouillons and stocks are a really good way to cook with, rather than boiling veg or boiling food in just water, salted water, using bouillons, because it would just add an additional flavor in there. So yeah, that's two of the main ways I'd look at doing it from a savory point of view. With your sweets, like I said, syrups, honey, anything that is a natural sugar is always a good flavor enhancer, rather than going for your refined sugar, so you caster sugar, that sort of thing. It's looking at other ingredients, natural sweeteners. So if you're looking at dried fruits, they are another good way of doing it, making syrups from your dried fruits, and then they can be poured over cakes and over sponges. So yeah, from a chef's point of view, if you're looking at your ingredients, if there's a way of adding something to it which will improve that flavor, then absolutely go for it, because it pretty much 90% of the time can be modified anyway. So
Perfect. Thank you for that. Right, that is all the questions from me. There was, as I said, from a person that couldn't, they were like in the kitchen team, and they couldn't attend. But yeah, to our attendees, if anyone has any more questions, I know we're a bit over our time limit, but if there's any last questions that you would love answered, please let us know. We can extend it just a bit, but yeah. If there are no any other questions, we can close it here. Let us know. You can write on the chat or in the Q&A.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Yeah. All right. Okay.
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 Is
Yeah.
it best to sort of close it, Soterius?
Yeah,
But also, we will send up a follow-up email to the attendees.
Yes.
Get in touch and take it from there.
Yeah. We're gonna also have like a post-webinar survey. How did you find the webinar? And also, if you wanna ask any more questions, you can guide them to us, and we can pass them over to Oliver. Okay. Thank you so much. It was great for today. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Ketan, for this webinar, and thank you all for attending as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
See you.